we go now.
If you are ready to live a life of abundance, if you are ready to best your best, then come to the edge. Because if you are not living your life on the edge, you are taking up far too much room.
Here we go now.
Welcome back to The Edge. I'm your host, Eric Brown, and I've got Mr. Mike Jones.
Hey, man. Thanks for being out here on this edge with me. And thank you all for coming out here on this edge with us. I know that it gets a little scary out here, but this particular episode probably is going to be one of the scariest ones to be out on this edge with us because we're going to push all up against some paradigms. Very likely, we're going to piss some people off in this particular episode. But man, I'm just asking, I'm begging you to listen with the intent to be influenced. Because if you really want to win, if you really want to live your best life, this episode is going to absolutely tell you how to do it.
Yeah, and Mike, at Discover, we talk a lot about different behavioral types and NLP. Let's just dive right in the deep end and start talking about these behavioral types and what we can do focused on ourselves and get to know others even better.
Yeah, that's ultimately where we're going, but it's going to be a little bit of a road to get there. So first of all, I got to say this out loud. If you are one of those individuals, and I mean, it is so prevalent in our world today, so I know that all of us have been affected on some level by this whole identity thing. You know, there has been baby boomers, there's been Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, this identity thing that we're going on through now, whether or not I'm a he, she, or she, he, or whatever those things are. All of these identity things. I'm going to say something to you, and it may be a little controversial, but I really want you to receive this. So listen with the intent to be influenced. I am going to submit in this moment, I am submitting that there is only one identity that you need to live by, to identify with, that is going to make the absolute biggest difference in your life. And I'm asking again that you be present with us, that you listen with the intent to be influenced as we talk through some of these generational characteristics that exist in the baby boomers, Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y, and all of the other things that come along with that. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, so where do we start with this, though? I mean, I imagine something around DISC and getting to know ourselves.
Yeah, and again, I really do want to get into that a little later, Eric, but right now, I really want to hone in on all of the different characteristics of the different generational gaps or groups that we have. And what I want you to, first of all, observe with me is that every one of these generational groups have specific characteristics that have become what they have been known by, how they associate people in that generational time frame. So what I'm going to say to you is that all of the characteristics that baby boomers are known for, all of those characteristics, be with me now, are available to X, Y, Z, and every other generational gap that's available. When I look at the generational attributes of someone that we now call a millennial, those things are pretty much spelled out that you can expect a millennial to show up this way. But you know what? All of those are behavioral tendencies that are available to every last one of us, every last one of you. So what I'm saying is if you are receiving yourself and investing yourself in that generational gap, and you've now fallen in line and you're on that well-worn path of the people in your generation, it just means that you have a predictable future. What I'm saying to you is that you did not come into this world with a hardwire that says that you're a Gen Z. And there is absolutely even no science behind how they come up with those generational labels. They throw some spaghetti up against the wall, and which whatever them sticks, and then we fall in line, others have fallen in line and associated themselves with those generational attributes, which means that it is predictable how you're going to show up. And we want to talk about how to get you off of that well-worn path. But first of all, we've got to educate you.
Yeah, so it sounds like those labels are placed upon us. So how do we remove the label?
Well, first of all, we never have to accept the label. The label is placed out there, wherever out there is, and we either associate ourselves with it or we do not. So I'm encouraging you now to wipe the slate clean, take the rearview mirror down as we talk about so much here on the edge, and absolutely look forward with the information that we're about to share with you so that you can accept the one label, the one identity that is going to make all of the difference in the world.
Okay, so in order to get there, that means knowing us so that others get to know us and how we react. So talking about disc.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So, the first thing that you've got to do is you got to understand yourself better. And the more and more you understand yourself better, it will allow you to understand others better. When you understand others better, you can learn how to meet them where they are rather than require them to do things the way that you do them or make assessments or judgments of them based upon the way that they're doing it versus the way that you do it. So let's talk about this disc profile that Eric was talking about earlier. First of all, understand, as I said earlier, you did not come into this world with a hardwire. You have created the person that you are. And you know what? We could probably stop right there and just spend a whole lot of time talking about that. But you have created the person that is listening to this podcast. You did not come into the world with a hardwire. The generational situation that they put you into, the group that they put you into, that's not your hardwire. That predictable behavior is not something that is ingrained in you, or that there's a chip placed in your brain or your heart that says that you are a Gen Z or a millennial or a baby boomer, and this is how you're going to be in the world, and this is how you're going to show up in the world. No, as we talked about in one of our past podcasts, you are choosing that. And because of the behaviors that you are choosing today, you have chosen to be in either the D quadrant, the I quadrant, the S quadrant, or the C quadrant. So, first of all, let's just throw a little science in there. From the point of cognition, about 4 to 6 months old or so, until you were 4 years old, over 45% of your belief system was in place. Now, these are all of the things that you're learning from other people, all of the behaviors that you have. By the time you're 4 years old, are all of the things that you've learned repetitiously from the people in your life as you have observed them from cognition to 4 years old, how your mom and dad treated each other, how they responded or reacted to circumstances, how they were handling money and vacations and everything. All of those things that you were observing over and over and over again created 45% of the lens that you presently view the world through. It created 45% of the map that you have navigated all of your relationships through, your choices through. 45% of that was in place by the time you were 4 years old. Now, by the time you were 18 years old, over 99% of that BS, your BS, was in place. And I know what you know what I mean by BS. Belief system, probably not what you were thinking, but 99% of the lens that you're viewing the world through, making judgments through, making assessments through, 99% of it was in place by the time you were 18 years old. 99% of the map that you're now navigating your life through, your relationships through, all of your circumstances and situations through, 99% of it was in place by the time you were 18 years old. So that has determined whether or not you would fall into the D quadrant, the I quadrant, the S quadrant, or the C quadrant. I want to say one more thing about this, and then we want to kind of dive into this a little bit. First of all, some of you look at the circumstances that have happened in your life, and because of the assessment that you made of it, you're running from pain or you're running to gain. You either have become the likeness of your teachers or you have gone the opposite direction. However, they are the central point. They are the ecosystem of everything that is created inside of you as you either ran to what they were teaching or you ran from what they were teaching.
Wow. So essentially, our lives are being run by a 4-year-old.
Yeah, and that's an interesting story as well. By the time you were 4 years old, as I said, 45% of that was in place. So let's talk about whether or not you're a D, you're an I, or you're an S, or you're a C. Let's talk about that for a moment. So first of all, a D is an individual. First of all, the D stands for dominance. They are individuals who love to be in control. D's love to absolutely do things that change things. In fact, if there's not a lot of change going on around a D, they are going to make some change happen. They have a motto: if it ain't broke, break it. These are those individuals who love challenges. They're very competitive individuals. They're very fast paced individuals. And when you're working with the D, all they want is the bottom line. They don't want to know the details, and they don't want to know about your personal life or your personal business. These make up 10% of the world population. And when most D's hear that, they say, I see, I told you I was special. Well, quite often, D's do not know how to appropriately meet other people where they are. And as you can see, 90% of the time, they need to learn how to meet other people where they are, and they don't do that really well. They generally have a mentality, my way or the highway. Now, if we move to the I quadrant, first of all, you got to understand Eric is an I. I stands for influencing. I's are those individuals who love to work with other people. They like to work on teams. They're generally very enthusiastic, very friendly people. Wherever there's a spotlight, there's a high I under the spotlight. When I's find themselves in trouble, it's because they say yes to everything. Quite often, they do not want people to not like them, so they just say yes to everything. Quite often, they get themselves overwhelmed with all of the yeses and cannot find enough time or space to do all of the things that they have committed to. Those I's make up 15% of the world population, Eric.
15%. All right. Well, tell us about the S, too.
Yeah. So the S stands for steady. S's are opposite the D, where D's like a lot of change going on. S do not like change. They want things to stay exactly the way that they are. In fact, they have a motto: if it ain't broke, leave it alone. It's just fine the way it is. S's are generally those people who follow the rules. They are generally very patient. They're very empathetic and sensitive people. They generally take better care of other people than they do themselves. S's love to be in trusting environments and in trusting relationships. When there is an S in your environment and there is a trusting relationship and a trusting environment, that S will shave their heads and go to battle for you. However, if they are in an environment that there is no trust, they take long lunch breaks or they change jobs. S's make up 60% of the world population. Where the D is fast paced and task oriented, the S is slow paced and they are people oriented, much like the high I's. As we move clockwise into the C quadrant, the last group that we'll talk about are the C's. And the C stands for conscientious. C's are those individuals that are analytical. They're very factual driven. They are very perfectionistic. They like to weigh the pros and the cons. They're generally very critical. C's are those individuals that if they never showed up, y'all, we'd still be living in bedrock. They absolutely take the time to make sure that all of the I's are dotted and all of the T's are crossed. They make up 15% of the world population.
Wow. So all of these behavioral types would probably encounter something or get to a choice point and do it very differently. So could you give us examples how a D might react differently than an I, an S, or a C?
Absolutely. You know, if you were to take the time to truly look at these behavioral styles, so first of all, you're going to find some Gen Zs in the D quadrant. You're going to find some Gen X's, some millennials, some baby boomers. You're going to find them in every one of these quadrants. But what I want you to truly be aware of, based on the question that Eric just asked, which is an incredible question, is every one of those behavioral quadrants approach the exact same thing in a much different fashion. It doesn't matter if they're a Gen Z, a millennial, or him, or her, or whatever all of these things are that we kind of connected to. They all approach the exact same thing in a much different fashion. Now, I said all of that to say this. It is not necessary. Oh man, this is about to be smoking hot, Eric. I need y'all to hear me now. Listen with the intent to be influenced. It is not necessary to make other people wrong in order for you to be right. I don't care what their identity is. Let me say that again. It is not necessary for you to make anyone else wrong in order for you to be right. What we have found is that there are very few facts in this world. However, there are a tremendous amount of interpretations and perceptions. The problem with the way that we communicate with each other, the problem with the way that we choose to be with each other, is we treat our interpretation of the facts as if they are facts. They are not, which means that we are now communicating from our own personal map. We are communicating through our lens and our assessments and our judgments, and we believe that those interpretations and perceptions are the truth. The awareness that I would have you have in this present moment, baby, is it is not the truth, it is your truth. You have a right to that truth. Yes, you do. And so do I have a right to mine. Not necessary for me to make you wrong, for me to be right, and vice versa. So let's talk about this. Here is a D approaching something as simple as getting on an elevator. The D walks up to the elevator. They push the button one time. Clearly, for this D, the elevator is running slow. D's have a tendency of being quite impatient. So as a result, they begin pushing the elevator button again and again and again, thinking that by pushing that button again and again and again, that the elevator is going to come faster. Clearly, it is not going to come faster. It is going to come when it comes. The D finally gets the elevator to arrive. The doors open. They get on board. They see some poor soul running later than they are, coming down the corridor, on their way to the elevator. They reach over and push closed door. They're fast paced. They are task oriented, and they absolutely are large and in charge no matter where they are. Here's an I approaching the exact same things as jovially as Eric would. They walk up to the elevator with a big smile on their face and they push the button one time. The only reason that they only pushed it one time is because there's a lot of people standing around and they're getting to know everyone. Where a high I tendency is concerned, they have the ability to be everybody's best friend. Well, they're there now communicating with everybody at the elevator. They've got their iPhone out showing pictures from the weekend, getting to know everybody. Elevator finally opens. They see some poor soul running late coming down the corridor to the elevator. The high I holds the door. There is always room for one more when there's a high I at this party. Now, what the I and the S have in common is that they're both people oriented. What they don't have in common is the I is also fast paced, but the S is slow paced. So the S slowly and patiently approaches this elevator. They push the button one time because that's all the rules says is required. The elevator finally opens. This S personality style makes sure that everyone can get on safely, and if there's room left, then they get on. If not, they patiently wait for the next elevator. And then we move to the C quadrant. What that C and the S have in common is that they're both slow paced. They're both slow to take action. However, the C is also task oriented like the D. What you now find is that the C pushes the button one time. They only push it one time because that's all the manual says is required. They have read the manual. The C sits there and waits for this elevator to open, and when it does, they walk in that little box. The first thing that they do is they look for the little plaque card that says maximum capacity 3,000 pounds, maximum number of people 10. They do a head count and a weight estimation, and they are going to ask someone to get off if this thing is overloaded. So those are the two personality styles. I would encourage you to identify which one of them is most like you, and as soon as you do, you will know what your behavioral tendencies are in most situations.
So, because everyone approaches the same thing in different ways, is there a right answer? I mean, which quadrant would you want to occupy?
You know, Eric, there's a really good question in that, first of all, what we refer to as right fighting is when you occupy the quadrant that you just identified as the one that is most like you. When you're occupying it all the time, you right, R-I-G-H-T, right fight to defend that as being the truth, as that as being the perspective, as that of being a fact. And quite often, when we remain in our comfort zones in that quadrant, which is your comfort zone, and right fight from there, all we do is create conflict in our relationships. So I'm going to submit that not any one of these quadrants is a right or wrong place for you to be. I'm saying to you that if you occupy the one that you've just identified, that's the most like you. If you identify that one all times, is that if you identify as a D, if you identify as an I, a S, or a C, and that is the identity that you hold on to in all situations, you are completely out of control because that's never going to come a time where that's always going to be the answer to whatever it is that is going on in your life.
So then, how do you determine which quadrant to be in?
Yeah. So if you want to know which one is the most appropriate, if you want to know what identity that we believe that you should embrace, then I'm asking that you listen with the intent to be influenced because this is some smoking hot shit, man. So you really got to embrace it. But let me say this first of all. For those of y'all that have a significant other, I want you to recognize that if you pick the D quadrant as the one that is the most like you, your significant other is at your diagonal in the S quadrant. Because what you will observe is that opposites attract and then they attack. You will observe that neither of those two quadrants have anything in common. The D's are fast paced and task oriented, the S's are slow paced and people oriented. If you are in the C quadrant, I am going to put my expert card on the line and I'm going to say that if you have a significant other, that person is in the I quadrant. Opposites attract and then they attack. So the I is fast paced, people oriented. The C is slow paced, task oriented. In the context of this conversation, they have nothing in common. So what we find is that when you overuse the strengths of that quadrant, those strengths become weaknesses. So to Eric's question, if you are using those behaviors inappropriately when they are not what you need in order to trend forward, then they are absolutely going to trend you away from whatever your outcome is in a negative way because they're going to do some damage in the context of whatever it is that you just applied them inappropriately. So, what I'm saying to you, the identity that we want you to have, the identity that we want you to embrace, the identity that's going to help you win, the identity that's going to allow you to truly be the best you that you can be is the identity that we refer to as game changer. Game changer. Not Gen Z, X, Y, Millennial, not D, I, S, or C, but game changer. And the game changer is the individual who recognizes in this present moment that I can be a D, I can be an I can be an S, I can identify with a C. All of these quadrants are available to me 86,400 seconds of every day, as we have talked about in almost every episode. You must know your outcome. OUTCOME. You must know your outcome in order to know the appropriate quadrant to be in 86,400 seconds of every day. You can absolutely know which one would be the most appropriate.
So I know my outcome. That tells me the quadrant that I'm focused to occupy. How do we practice this?
Beautiful. We have to set an outcome. That's how we begin practicing it. As soon as I set an outcome. So let's talk about some very specific examples here. So I want you to start small because we talk a lot about taking small steps and getting small wins. Set an outcome today that you're going to be healthier. This does not mean you got to go get a gym membership. This doesn't mean that you got to go run a mile. We're going to start very small. We're going to drink 32 ounces of water per day for the next 7 days. That's the outcome that we have set. So now that we have an outcome, we know the appropriateness of our behavior. We know that we've made a commitment to this 32 ounces of water. So now I can set it in my watch, I can set it on my calendar, on my phone, whatever means that I need to track this measurable outcome. I will be able to see the trending just based upon the outcome. I will know whether or not I was successful or not by the end of the day because I will now have measured how much water I had. My commitment was to 32 ounces. So I'm asking you to start small, take some small steps, and get some small wins. Now, when I set that outcome, Eric, it means that I was in the C quadrant. I'm now coming up with a plan. I'm designing a plan. I got a number. I'm being contemplated. And now that I have the plan, I've got to execute the plan, which means I'm going to move to the D quadrant. So I am going to execute this plan. I am going to follow up and follow through. I'm going to get it done. And then I'm going to move to the I quadrant, baby. And I'm going to celebrate like hell. I'm going to celebrate that victory. And I want you to observe. If you get in this process and you play with this and you practice this, it is going to allow you to become more present in every aspect of your life.
Wow, Mike, some really smoking hot shit on this podcast. So one question, you talked about how to practice it and set that outcome. But what if we fail? I mean, what if we don't get to the outcome? What should we do?
Yeah, that really is a beautiful question, man. And I know that there's a bunch of people out there who have set outcomes and have fallen flat on their ass, and that's okay. So I got to say this, and you've heard me say this many times. Winners lose more often than losers lose. As we go through this process, as you get out on that edge, I am going to encourage you to be kind to yourself. KIND, be kind to yourself because you're going to fall down every now and then. Every now and then, you're going to make a poor choice. You are. But you got to recognize that I want you to remain responsible, personally responsible for those choices. In order for me to do better, I got to accept personal responsibility for the times that the wound that I just received by falling down is self-inflicted because I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And then sometimes there will be circumstances that will come in that will have you be beyond your control that may create some circumstances that may prevent you from getting to that outcome. My word, kind. Be kind to yourself in those moments.
So you heard it here first, y'all. Be kind to yourself and be the game changer. Mike, thanks. We're dropping some more smoking hot shit on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central. So come and join us.
Absolutely. So the one thing I got to say to you on the way out here, baby, is identity. You need one. Make it game changer. That's the only identity that you need to live the best life that you can live out here on the edge. Because if you're not out here on this edge, you are absolutely taking up far too much room.
Here we go now.